We were taught that fairies belonged to old stories, yet today people are encountering them quietly, unexpectedly, in ordinary life. I'm Claire Casely, a fairy whisperer and your guide on this journey. On the Fairy Whispering podcast, I speak with guests who've met these beings at the edges of perception and the thresholds of the everyday. To catch a fairy whisper, you have to listen closely. Listen with me. Welcome to Fairy Whispering. I'm Claire Casely, your host. Tonight we return to one of the most haunting corners of Dartmoor, a place where folklore, sorrow and the supernatural meet at the crossroads. In this archive episode, I walk the moor with David Phillips, local storyteller and paranormal investigator, as we explore the legends surrounding Dartmoor's Witches' Triangle. Our path leads us to Jay's grave, the resting place of a young girl whose tragic story has shaped more than a century of ghost lore. David brings his deep knowledge of Dartmoor's witchcraft traditions, the crossroads and the goddess Hecate, opening a window into the way this landscape holds memory, mystery and the echoes of the unseen. And if you'd like early access to episodes and occasional behind the scenes notes from my creative world, you're warmly invited to join the Fairy Whispering Patreon community. This is the Witches' Triangle. From spectral sightings to the rituals of local witches, this episode invites you into the moor's darker, more liminal spaces, the places where the veil thins and the land begins to speak. Before we venture into the Witches' Triangle, I want to open a small door of sound. This is a fragment from The Myling by Norwegian singer-songwriter Lena Hyde Brennand. It's a Scandinavian song about the restless and the unremembered. Lena will be a future guest on Fairy Whispering. May her music serve as our guiding light into the episode as we visit the wayside grave of young Mary J. and her unborn child.
The snow fell thin on the mountain trail. The pines bend low in the gale.
David and I are at Jay's grave, and there's some flowers and tokens on the grave, some shells, some pennies. Someone scattered some ashes, which is quite strange. Some fake flowers, some roses, and a horseshoe.
And a J.
Oh yes, a J for Jay's grave as well.
It looks like an ant or some sort of insect on a rock.
A pebble.
Yes, but no bears and dogs.
Yes,
We'll come to that.
Yeah. So this is a good place to start talking about Jay's grave.
Jay's grave, yes. Well, Jay was a young orphan girl who was brought up in the workhouses of Newton Abbot.
Yeah.
And then she was taken in by a farmer at Caniford Farm, which is just up the road from her grave. This is where she lived and worked, and she struck up a relationship with the farmer's son. And as a result of that relationship, she unfortunately became pregnant. And in those days, being pregnant outside of wedlock was a mortal sin. And so the farmer and his son shunned her, and so did all the locals. And she could see no other way out of a predicament apart from taking her own life.
So sad.
Yes,
Yeah.
which she did in the barn where she was living. And again, unfortunately for her, suicide was another mortal sin, and that was punished by not being allowed a Christian burial in a churchyard. What they did back in those days was bury the suicide victim just a hole in the ground near a crossroads. The idea being that their spirit can no longer find their way back to where they used to live, so they couldn't haunt the living. And they even went as far as, in some cases, as putting a stake through the heart, a bit like you would do a vampire. But I'm not sure if that's what actually happened to Kitty J. I'd like to think not, but that's another thing that they did to try and anchor a spirit to a particular point. And as you can see here at Jay's grave, you have got the crossroads with the road running past it and a track that bisects it and goes off down to Natsworthy Manor. And then the landowner of this area got a bit fed up of all his tenants being afraid to walk this way at night. They said it was haunted. So in an attempt to try and put their fears at bay, he decided to dig at this spot just to see exactly what was here. And sure enough, he did find the skeleton of a young girl that was pregnant. And as an act of respect, he reburied her in the grave with the headstone that we see it today. And the result of that, it became a sort of place of pilgrimage, and people would come here and leave flowers and what have you. But the story goes that supposedly at midnight, a mist descends upon the grave, and when it lifts, there's a completely new display of flowers here. Whether that's true or not, I don't know, but I have spent several nights here trying to find out, and nothing like that has happened here. But I have met people that take it upon themselves to tend to the grave. They'll remove dead flowers and anything that's not appropriate. And I'm sure they too sort of would then leave their own offerings as well. So it's become a place, of meditation and what have you, and just paying respects to the young girl that's buried here. Over the years, I've done a little bit of research into the story, and myself and my friend, we believe that the owners of Natsworthy Manor, which is just down the lane behind the grave, they would have been the landowners at the time when Jay was alive, and their ancestors would have been the ones that would have decreed where she was to be buried. They would have refused her Christian burial and would have chosen the spot for her. And so as a sort of act of penance since then, the family have made it their task to come and tend to the grave and leave offerings as well. Several years ago, I was asked to take part in the BBC's Video Nation project. The idea was that you were given a camera to go and record something that you were passionate about, and I was given the camcorder and a film. But what they actually did put up was the 5 minutes that I did about Kitty J's story. And when it was published on their website, there was like a message board. And a lot of people, having seen the extract, then wrote their own stories and experiences that they've had here at the grave. Just up the road from the grave is a little cottage at Swallerton Gate, which is below Houndtor. And a friend of mine who's a very good psychic artist, not only can she sort of communicate with spirit, but she can also draw the pictures of the people that she sees. And she was asked to take part in an exercise by a TV company to spend a night at the cottage just to see if they could pick up any trace or a connection to Kitty J. And she and a fellow medium spent the night there, and during the course of the night she drew 2 pictures. One was of an elderly lady, the other was of an old-fashioned vicar with the ribbons on his dog collar. And she came to our meeting on a Monday night at Churston Court and brought the pictures with her. The same night, 2 of our ladies that were regular members of the group, they came to us with a particularly interesting tale to tell. They'd been up here at Houndtor It was their like spiritual place where they both like to go and meditate and what have you. It turned out that one of them had never visited the grave. So they put that right, and they both came to the grave. And whilst they were here, they had this vision of a young girl, presumably Kitty J, being held by her wrist by an old hag-like woman. So to them, it felt like Kitty J's spirit wasn't being allowed to leave. So they did a little sort of meditation, and they thought that they'd managed to release Jay's spirit. And as they were driving home, they both had a blinding vision of Kitty J still being held here. So they're a little bit concerned that what they'd done hadn't worked. So anyway, they came along to our meeting to sort of share this story with us. And at the same time, Mary was there with the pictures. And when the two women saw the picture of the old lady, they freaked out because it was exactly the same image that they'd both seen in their vision.
Wow.
So that was a little bit of an odd coincidence. But no, it was quite an interesting picture. But there's also a third part to the story. One of the messages that appeared on the message board on the BBC's website was from another young lady who had come up here with her friend, and they'd parked on the bank overlooking the grave in their car, and they sat there with the headlights shining on the grave just to see if anything would happen, whether the flowers would appear or whatever. But whilst they watched, so this couple walked up the lane coming from the cottage, and they knelt down at the headstone as though in prayer, and then they got up and started walking back up the lane. So the two girls decided they'd follow them. So as they followed them up the lane with the headlights shining on them, so the two figures just disappeared.
Oh, gosh.
Into nothing. And they said that one looked like an old woman and the other was an old-fashioned priest with the ribbons on his dog collar.
Wow, what amazing confirmation.
So, yeah, so there's three different stories of the same evidence. So I'm pretty certain as a result of that we can say there are ghosts here that hang around Kitty J's grave.
Sorry, what was the farm that she was supposed to have worked at? Do you know?
Caniford Farm is what I've read.
Caniford
Yes.
Farm. Where's that?
It's just up the lane as you go past the grave. Below Easton Tor, it's just in that area.
I know, I've walked past that when I went to Easton Tor last summer.
Yeah.
I walked past the farm. It's a really old sort of place.
Yeah, that's where she's... Some farms do try and claim they're the one where she lived, but most stories suggest it's Caniford. Yeah, it's a very, very sad tale. But there's something else to add to the mix. I believe there's a connection with witchcraft, of a sort of, not the black sort, but the nice sort of teenage witch sort. There is a goddess that pagans and witches worship called Hecate.
Yes.
And she's known as the goddess of the crossroads and of the dead. So I'd imagine she is sort of worshipped in this area. Her familiars are bears and dogs. And over the years, as I've sort of studied the grave and come to look at all the offerings, I've found quite a few cuddly toys that they're not dolls or things like that you'd expect to give to a young girl, but they are mainly dogs and bears.
Interesting.
The Paddington Bear's been here, and Pluto being the dog, and several others of that type. And they're here sort of 1 minute and gone the next. So I don't think they've been tidied up, but I think that teenage witches, as part of their rituals, would leave these offerings here for a lunar cycle to allow them to charge up with the moon's energy.
Yeah.
And then they'd come and take them back and use them for their own rituals back at home or wherever. Sadly, there's nothing like that here today, but I think there's a definite link between the grave and local witches.
That's really interesting. I think I'll definitely pay more attention when I come, and it's useful to know that all the offerings here have some kind of symbolism, don't they?
Yeah. I mean, we did notice that there's ashes here. It's white powder, whether it's of someone's relative or whether it's just a pet. I don't know, but it is rather an odd residue to sort of find here. And of course, on the top, you've got all the coins. And I've got an interesting story about that. On one of my Sunday walks with friends, a friend of mine called Bob Mann, who's a local writer, who wrote the Ghosts of Totnes book that was published by Chips Barber. We came past the grave and he noticed there were some coins on the top, and as we were heading to the pub, he didn't have that much cash on him at the time, so he borrowed a couple of pounds from the grave. And in his next book there's a nice little dedication to Kitty J as a thank you for the money that he borrowed from her.
For his pint.
So yes.
That's great.
Yeah.
I mean, coins are a big tradition on Dartmoor,
Yes.
leaving them. There's the money trees
Yes.
at Becky Falls, there's some, and then at Lidford Gorge as well, which are left for the pixies, aren't
yes,
they?
the pixies like their offerings of pins and pennies.
Yeah. And there's another story of connecting with pixies, that they tend to look after graves. So there's a story I read about Jay's grave that at one stage it was believed that the pixies were putting the flowers on the grave.
Yes, they could get involved as well.
Yeah. So it's quite a mix, isn't it, of different traditions.
But that's
stories.
It's like any sort of well-known, well-visited spot. In order to boost its interest, then the idea is you add other tales to it.
Yes.
I mean, for instance, you've got Bury Pomeroy Castle outside Totnes, is one of the most haunted castles in the country, allegedly. But history suggests that a lot of the stories attached to it, like the idea of the brothers jumping off the wall on their horses, that never actually happened at the castle. But when it was built in the local countryside, there are hill forts that would have been lived in and what have you. So it's more rational to think that this story, if it took place, happened at one of these hill forts. It would have been a lot easier for a horse to jump over a wooden fence rather than off the wall of the castle. But when the castle was built, in order to boost its sort of prestige, the idea of two brave brothers riding their horses off the battlements would have made the castle look a lot more important. But historically there's no evidence that the place was ever under siege, so that story didn't take place there. But again, the idea of adding the pixie stories to Jade's grave brings in more Dartmoor folklore to boost interest.
Over the river and hills, the earth is cold where you left my bones, and my little heart.
There is another well-known story of a suicide on Dartmoor, and he's buried at a spot above Peter Tavy. Again, another crossroads of footpaths in that area. He was called Stephen. So what you come across when you're walking in that area is like a pillar of granite on a base, and on the base is carved the initial S, obviously standing for Stephen. And he was a local lad who was enamoured by a local farm girl who lived just on the edge of the moor there. And it was kind of like, he was infatuated, but he sort of viewed from a distance rather than trying to ask her out. He would just sort of, look at her as she went about her daily business. And then one day he saw her in the arms of another man, and he became very jealous, and he couldn't allow his love to have another, so he poisoned an apple, intending to take it to the girl and to kill her. But instead, at the last minute, he changed his mind and ate the apple himself. And when it transpired that his death was a suicide, he was taken up to the moor and buried at the spot below the granite stone with his initial of his name on.
Oh, sad story.
Yes.
I mean, when did that happen? Do you know? Is there any sort of historical...
I'm not sure of the exact dates, but there is evidence sort of written down about it. But again, I'm not au fait with dates and such like. But I think it's not more recent than Kitty J, but of a contemporary sort of period. Because again, I'm not sure when the act of allowing suicide to have a Christian burial was ended. Although I still think there is a tradition today that suicide, although they're allowed in a churchyard, they're not in a sanctified spot. So there is still a black mark on anybody committing suicide, depending on how religious they or their family is, I guess.
It's interesting about the poisoned apple, and I wonder...
Snow White.
Snow White, yes, that's what comes to mind,
Yes.
doesn't it? This idea, and whether that's actually part of the original, what actually happened, whether that's added in
Right.
as another layer, that's, he used a poisoned apple.
Yeah.
Um,
And how they would... Well, how they found out that it was an actual, purposeful act to
Yes.
take his life that way. And obviously they tested for any abnormalities in his bloodstream or whatever, but or whether he told somebody, don't know, but it all makes for a good story.
it does.
And another Dartmoor grave.
Yes. So it's two relatively young people then
Yes.
that have,
Yeah.
due to some kind of romantic entanglement.
Yes. So it's the sort of, what do they call them? Tales of the meaning, like a warning sort of thing to others.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's also, linking into that, one of the places I read about in Crossing Tales of the Dartmoor Pixies is Lover's Leap
Right.
on the River Dart,
Uh-huh.
where it's like a rocky outcrop. It's part of Coombe Woods, I think,
Right.
and lovers would go there and leap off to their deaths when things went horribly
Okay.
wrong.
Well,
So, there's,
whether it's like a sort of Romeo and Juliet type thing where the star-crossed lovers that weren't allowed to be for various reasons, maybe to do with their families having a feud or whatever, but that's the sort of conditions they'd have to be living under to want to do something as drastic as that.
that's right. And I suppose in the case of Kitty J, she had nowhere to turn in those days for any sort of support.
Yeah. Very sad. And of course the other big grave on Dartmoor is Squire Cable's tomb at Buckfastleigh Church, which has got a lot of myths and legends attached to it. Investigated that on many occasions, going up at night in the dark just to see if anything happens, and the idea of walking 13 times with your shins around the tomb, and then if you put your finger in the keyhole, supposedly he nibbles on your finger, and if you look behind you in the doorway of the church itself is supposed to stand the devil, as he was very much in league with Squire Cable, supposedly. But no, Squire Cable is said to have led the Devil's Hunt, and which gave him rather a nasty reputation, which he kind of encouraged by he would kidnap young ladies from the local tavern of a night, have his wicked way with them, and then just throw them out onto the street sort of thing in the morning. But he lived at Brook Manor, which is just up the road from Buckfastleigh Church. And
so not a nice character at all.
Not at all, no. And it was his story that when Conan Doyle came to do research for his Hound of the Baskervilles novel, he was told about old Squire Cable, and it became inspiration for the Sherlock Holmes tale, being the wicked lord of the manor.
And did you test out the theory of walking around?
Unfortunately, nowadays the keyhole's a bit too small to fit any finger through, but several of my friends have walked around it and nothing has happened really. Although one moonlit night we had bats flying in through the entrance, silhouetted against the full moon, so that was rather special. there's an anniversary tale attached to Squire Cable. On his anniversary of his death, which is the 5th of July, supposedly his hounds come and sit and bay at his tomb, and at night his carriage drives up the driveway to Brook Manor to take him off on his last journey again.
And have you been on 5th of July?
Yes, I've been there a couple of times. One night it was quite misty.
Yeah.
Didn't see or hear any hounds. And you can't actually see the manor from the road, but we did drive that way and there was quite a mist across the road. So even if we could see it, the mist would have shrouded it, so we wouldn't have seen anything happening. At Hound Tour, there's a story about a gentleman who was visiting the area, and he came across the spirit of a Jewish peddler. Now, there is a story that connects all the stone crosses, the origins of how they were erected, basically by one of the abbots of the abbey. He'd heard stories about how his brethren were losing themselves in the bogs all over the moor, and he wanted to give them safe passage. But the story starts one day when he was away on business, and some of the brothers decided that they were going to have a party. So they took out the communion wine and started to enjoy themselves a bit too much, and they decided that they wanted some more. So they knew there was a camp of itinerant gypsies in the area, and they knew they had a supply of alcohol. So they took the prized possession of the abbey, or their gold, the candlesticks and plates and what have you, and they used it to purchase a supply of alcohol, which they then brought back to the abbey and continued partying. And obviously the next morning they all woke up with thick heads and suddenly realised what they'd done and how unhappy the abbot would be when he got back. So they thought they needed a plan to replace the gold and the candlesticks and what have you. So they knew that there was a route that this particular Jewish peddler took to go to market to sell his wares and what have you. And so they lay in wait for him one day, and when he approached, they jumped out and startled him, and his horse ran off into the bog, and he drowned.
Oh gosh!
And was killed. And the monks took his possessions, brought back the gold and the candlesticks for the abbey, and replaced them, and hoped that the abbot would be none the wiser. Anyway, before the abbot returned, there was a knock on the door, and this hooded stranger was there, and he said there were some people that were lost on the moors, and could the brothers come and help to find them. So the brothers went out with this stranger onto the moor, and he led them deeper and deeper into the boggy parts, and just as they realised they were lost, he turned and threw back his hood, and it was the ghost of the Jewish peddler.
Oh wow!
And the brothers all fled, floundered in the bog, and they drowned. So the Jewish peddler got his revenge, and as a result of that incident, the abbot was really upset that he'd lost members of his abbey, and so he then asked the local stonemasons to build and construct these crosses that you can still see on the moor, to give his brothers and other travellers safe passage around the most treacherous parts of the moor. And I'd like to think that maybe what the gentleman saw at Hound Tour was the ghost of this very same Jewish peddler that had got his revenge on the monks.
That's amazing. I didn't realise that there was another story connected to hound talk. I've only heard the usual stories of the hounds.
Right. Well, the hounds are to do with the Bowman's nose story.
Yes.
Moving on to Hayne Down.
Yeah.
If you follow one of the tracks leading away from Jay's grave, you come to Hayne Down, which has got one of the most iconic outcrops of rock on Dartmoor, that's known as the Bowman's Nose.
Yep.
And Bowman was a local hunter who quite regularly came up onto the moors on his horse, accompanied by his hounds, and he would go hunting in these parts. One particular day, he was riding up onto the downs when he came across a coven of witches in amongst the rocks, with their cauldrons and doing spells and rituals and what have you. And rather than doing the gentlemanly thing and skirting round them, he ran straight through them with his horse and his hounds, and he scattered the witches everywhere, spilt their cauldrons, and basically really annoyed them, so much so that they vowed to get their revenge. And the next time the sisters heard that the Bowman was going to ride in their area, they devised a plan whereby one of their sisters turned herself into a hare, allowed herself to be chased by the Bowman on his horse with his hounds, and she led him a merry dance and eventually brought him to the rocks on Hayne Down, where her sisters jumped out, cast a spell on him, and turned him into the pillar of rock that still stands there to this day. His hounds took flight, and they got as far as the site of Hound Tor, where they too were turned into stone, and they make up the Hounds of Hound Tor.
And I'd heard that there's some connection with giants as well with Bowman. Story that he was a giant.
Okay.
I read.
Well, I guess the rock is rather tall, so
yes.
Not a normal size, so he could well be, but then that would mean that his horse would be rather large as well to be able to carry him.
Yeah.
So, so we'll keep the story in the bounds of reality, I think.
But then over on Easton Tor, there's Figgy Daniel as well.
That's right.
So, and that's quite a similar rock formation, isn't it? So
yes, a smaller size.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. But he was a local, I believe, that gave his name to that particular outcrop.
I always find it quite fascinating to talk to people that live in these places.
Yeah.
And what they experience spending a long time there.
Talking of the devil, which is one of my favourite subjects, his connection with Buckfastleigh Church is interesting, as he had a hand in its building. The people of Buckfastleigh wanted to build a church actually in the town, but once work was started, the devil decided that he didn't want any more places of worship on his patch, as it were, so he moved all the building materials to the top of the hill. The idea being that if it was built on top of the hill, no one would go there because it'd be too far to walk to get there. So this happened for a couple of days running. The builders would start their work, go away at night, come back the next morning, and it would all be moved to the top of the hill. So in the end, the locals decided to give in and build the church on top of the hill, but at the same time they constructed a series of steps running right from the village to the church, so giving them a sort of easier access, although it's quite a steep hill, but at least with proper steps it meant that people would know be able to get there.
Through this gateway?
I walk up a lane past a farm the other week, and there are all these sheep at the end of the lane nibbling on the bush at the end. And as I approached, they all ran back, and there was a cattle grid, and they'd obviously trained themselves to get across the cattle grid. It was quite funny.
So a bit pointless.
Well, yeah. Whether the owners know that's what they were doing, I don't know, but I certainly caught them out doing it.
I've heard a similar story about the devil and Brenthall Church
Yes,
moving the stones.
that's right. Yeah, that's
And-
the other one I was going to mention, because that's the reverse. The story there is that a local merchant was in a storm at sea, and he prayed to St Michael, who's the patron saint of sailors, that if he brought them safely to land, he would build a church in his honour on the first highest point he could come across.
Yeah.
So fortunately for the merchant, he was brought safely to land, and true to his word, he then went to build his church up on Brenthall, which is the first highest point that you could see. And as he started the work, as work was started building a church on top of the hill, the devil took it upon himself to remove all the brickwork and put it on the bottom of the hill, because again, you know, the devil doesn't really like places of worship on his patch. So again, this happened over a few nights. You know, building would start on top, next morning everything was on the floor at the foot of the hill, and the merchant, not wanting to let down St Michael, prayed again to St Michael, asking him to come and sort the devil out so they could complete the work. And so St Michael turned up, had a little word and a little fight with the devil, and the result of which the devil went off with his tail between his legs, and work was allowed to be completed. And so there is Brenthall Church on top. It's a volcanic outcrop, actually. It's not granite like the rest of the moor, it's volcanic. And it stands there in tribute to St Michael, and as a lesson to the devil to leave well alone.
Yeah, I've heard that it was a volcano.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
And there's the hill fort there, isn't there, originally? Oops. There's the hill fort, which was obviously there before
Yes.
the church.
Yeah, and it's still used for the odd service now and again. It's a nice, you know, bit of a climb up there, but once you're there, it's worth the visit. And of course, it's also on the St Michael's line, which is the ley lines that crisscross the country. And if you're a dowser, then you can actually pick up that energy, and the line does go across the side of Brenthall Hill.
And then through Glastonbury
Through
as
Glastonbury,
well.
yes.
Yes, Glastonbury Tor.
Touches on quite a lot of special sacred sites along the way. So yeah, interesting. And of course, ley lines can attract spirits and what have you. So again, it could account for a lot of the paranormal activity
Yeah, so it could account for a lot of the strange happenings
Yes.
on Dartmoor,
Yeah,
the Michael line.
yeah.
Where else does it go through? It goes through
It comes up from Cornwall.
Cornwall.
Yes. And then just touches the edge of the moor there.
Yes.
And so, as you said, Glastonbury. Is it Avebury as well, I think? I've read the books about it, but it's been a while. So my memory's not that clear on it. But yeah, it goes a fair stretch and then heads sort of north as well. So there's also in Brixham, got St Mary's Bay.
Yes.
There's a ley line that starts there.
Right.
It's got some St Mary and St Michael lines, and that particular campsite that's built at St Mary's Bay is quite notorious for burning down.
Oh, is it? That's it.
One idea
Yeah.
is that because the energy there, that's
Yeah.
ley line, is so strong that now and again, fires do break out, sort of almost spontaneously. But it has happened quite a lot over the years. So it does suggest that there's something else perhaps going on there.
And yeah, there's also a big fault line that goes down through Dartmoor as well, isn't there? I've forgotten what it's called now, but it's what a lot of the mines
Right.
are on.
Yeah.
Goes from the top of North Devon down through Dartmoor.
Well, yes, I mean, the moor is full of mines and tinning and what have you. It's what, it's what Dartmoor became famous for back in the day, the big industry, which is why there are so many little hamlets and villages on the moor, because all the miners had to have somewhere to sort of live, as well as all the tinners' huts that you find scattered around the open moor, and that's why there's so many pubs here, to accommodate all the workers, not just the mines, tin mines, quarrying and farmers. There was a lot more industry and activity here back in the day than possibly there is nowadays, and many of those hostelries are still here for us to go and enjoy. It's always nice to go to a pub after a long walk.
And they've recently rebuilt and reopened the North Bovey, the Ring of Bells, haven't they?
Again, that was a fire.
Yes.
Not suggesting anything to do with ley line energy, but yes, rather a tragic incident, and now it's back in business again, so that's nice to see.
And here's Easton Tor in front of us.
Easton Tor, yeah.
It's such an iconic tor, isn't it? And hill.
All on its own. And of course you've got the Whooping Rock, which supposedly was a cure for whooping cough. The idea was you'd lay your child naked on the rock, and they'd be cured of whooping cough. But they probably caught pneumonia and what have you, process, so died of something else instead. But it wouldn't have been a whooping cough.
I wonder do you know what that little rock pile is there at the bottom, just behind this tree? There's
is that Figgy Daniel?
No, that's over the other side.
Right.
Figgy Daniel,
There's quite a few outcrop. Well, that Whooping Rock. Hang on, I'm just going to consult my map a second.
Whooping Rock is more up
That's
near
up,
the top,
yes,
isn't
below
it? It's just up
below
there.
the trig.
Big one. I couldn't see it on the map.
No, it doesn't really name anything else, but that's the thing with Dartmoor. Though, it's the land of tours, but not everyone has got a name. And if it has got a name, they're not as well publicised as the main ones that you can visit more easily.
And the lantern's flame burned low, then something climbed on the woman's back from the drifting wind.
Okay, well, we've come up to Easton Tor. Already told the story about the Whooping Rock and what have you. But there's an interesting artefact that's on display at the Witchcraft Museum down in Boscastle, which is somewhere where I love to visit frequently. We're often down there for Halloween. They do a thing called the Dark Gathering, which is a whole load of Morris dancers, the Beltane Morris doing the fire dance and what have you. It's a whole day of rituals for Samhain. And inside the museum is this artefact, which is a skull, a human skull, that's in a sort of cage. The bottom it's red. It's like a pentagram with a crossover bar to hold it in place. And apparently this used to belong to a white witch who lived in North Bovey. And she was always sort of, doing sort of homemade remedies and what have you. And she called this skull her friend. And apparently she used to keep it up here on Easton Tor in a little crevice. And this is where she would come up and consult her friend and carry out her rituals and spell castings and what have you.
The skull was owned by Old Granny Mann of North Bovey. She lived in the early 1900s. Gemma Gary, in Silent as the Trees, her wonderful book on Devonshire witchcraft, folklore and magic, says that skulls and other objects such as bottles and jars were used by witches to house a spirit that they consulted for magical advice and healing cures. From Easton Tor, the twin peaks of Haytor are very clear. Some say that these resemble the face of a witch, upturned to the sky. It is a tor that is visible from many places on Dartmoor, and possibly had great significance for ancient people.
And we've actually come to a little alcove in the rocks, which looks ideal for someone to stash their skull. Just below us is the main track that comes up from North Bovey heading towards Easton Farm. And if you can imagine, this is a little old lady doing a walk from North Bovey that you'd want somewhere, rather than walking all the way up the hill to the tor itself, you'd want somewhere sort of fairly low down so you didn't have to make that sort of trip to the top. So in my book, this is an ideal spot. And I really can sort of picture this skull and its red frame sitting here waiting for his friend to come and consult it.
Yeah, it's a really obvious cave, isn't it, as we were walking up?
It is.
And it really stood out as a place.
You can't actually get inside. It's just got like a flat portion, which you could just imagine a witch's altar being, imagine a few candles laid out and what have you. This is the ideal spot. And there's a little nook underneath where you could quite imagine it was stowed away out of sight so people wouldn't stumble across it by accident. And then when she's here, she'll bring it out and set up her altar. So I think we found it.
Yeah, I think we have. Yes. And it's quite sheltered here as well, isn't it? Standing here, but it's quite a windy day. But
got beautiful views up towards Haytor and Houndtor.
Yeah.
So it's ideal. You can come here in all weathers and do a spell castings. And just to sort of kind of confirm that it's a hidey place, as we got here, there was a letterbox.
Yes.
Part geocache, part letterbox on underneath the rock. And by weird coincidence, the stamp that is inside the box belongs to Pinho Cubs. And I've actually just recently started to live in Pinho in Exeter with my partner. So what are the chances of that?
It's amazing confirmation. I like the logo that says Rock Out Loud.
Rock Out Loud, 2010. Yes.
We're under a rock.
Yes.
So it's almost like, a sign, isn't it?
I mean, and the box itself has been decorated with a branch of a tree and other sort of bits of foliage. So normally they're just like random Tupperware boxes that you'd find shoved under a rock, but someone's obviously taken the time to decorate this with images of natural, bits of nature and what have you. So it's obviously a special spot for other people as well. So maybe the spirit of our friendly witch lives on.
Yeah. And do we know, I mean, because you've been to the Witchcraft Museum, what does it say about the skull, and how would she have got hold of a human skull?
It doesn't give too much detail about that. But I'd imagine it's probably something that's been passed down to her from the generations. And Dartmoor, as we know from the tales, was inhabited by many sort of witches, and it's also got its fair share of places of execution. At the end of the lane running up past Easton Tor, you've got a place called the Watching Post, the Watching Place. It says it on the signpost opposite the junction. You've got B Tor Cross, which is a little stone cross up on the wall to the right, and this is in front of you, and it stands on the edge of the Morton Hampstead to Princetown Road. So it's obviously the road in and out of the villages on the moor, and a lot of rich people would ride their carriages across that part, and that's where highwaymen would hang out, hence the watching place. They would look out for unsuspecting carriages and hold them up and rob them. And if they were ever caught, then the highwaymen, if they were found guilty of their crimes, would then be brought back to the place of their crime and strung up on a gibbet that would have been erected there. And people would have come to watch them hang, hence another reason for the watching place. But not only that, to the north of the moor, near Oakhampton, you've got a place called Gibbet Hill. Again, as the name suggests, it had another gibbet there, but not just a gibbet, it had one of those little iron cages that criminals would be incarcerated in and just basically just left to rot. And so that would have been of particular interest to the local witches, because they would want various body parts to use in their spell castings. In particular, they would like what they call the hand of glory, which is a human hand that's obviously severed, and then candles are attached to all the fingers, and then during rituals they would be lit, and that light and that energy would be used for rituals. So if they like to chop off hands, then what's to say they wouldn't remove the skull once the person had died? And I'd imagine that's probably where this particular artifact would have come from. It would have been a criminal that was found rotting away up here on the moors, and put in this. It's rather ornate. It's like a nice sort of red iron pentagram, as I said, with a sort of an arm that goes over the top to hold it in place. So obviously someone put a lot of thought into that, energized it for whatever reason, and I can imagine that was passed down through the generations of the white witches in the local area, and it found its way up here to Easton.
I'd love to see that next time at the Witchcraft Museum, but I'll look up online about it as well and see.
They do put a lot of their stuff up especially on Instagram. And if you look up the museum, it is one of the artefacts that they like to show off. So it's worth a look.
And what was her name? Do we know?
Not sure of the name. She was just called the Wise Woman of North Bovey. During the course of our ramblings today, I think we've covered what I've now dubbed the Witch's Triangle. Not only have we got the idea of young witches using Jay's grave for energy raising, and the idea of Hecate residing over it. Other side of the Downs, you've got the Bowman's Nose with its story of the witches that turned the hunter to stone. Now, obviously, they weren't there at random. There was obviously something about that spot in amongst the rocks that they felt was conducive to their rituals and spell casting. And then now we're here on Easton Tor, and the possible witch's altar that the wise woman of North Bovey used with her friend, the skull in his iron frame. So you've got like a triangle of places that witches like to use, and the number 3 is quite a magical number. So I like to think that we're walking in sacred ground, following in the footsteps of the wise women of the moor.
It really did feel special to walk in the footsteps of some of these wise women. On the way back down from Easton Tor, David told me about some of the history of churches on Dartmoor and pagan worship, and also some of the many places that are connected with the devil. If you could say what you were just saying about the churches, because that was really interesting.
The original religion, if you want to call it that, of this area would have been paganism. Which is why you find so many stone rows and stone circles, because this was all used as part of their rituals. And then along comes Christianity and builds all these lovely stone buildings with towers and what have you. And in order to try and make the local population feel more at home, they were all designed with barrel vaulted roofs. The idea is it would symbolise the archways of trees that pagans were used to worshipping under. And then these vaulted ceilings were then decorated with these bosses with images of the Green Man, the Hunt of Venus, and various other sort of pagan symbols. The idea was all this, decoration was to make the pagans feel at home when they were encouraged to come indoors to, worship Christianity instead. But I think worshipping nature and the seasons and the sky and the sun and the moon is a far more interesting thing to revere than a god that you may or may not see.
Yeah, I'd agree there. It's much more natural to us, isn't it? As we, being part of nature and originally living more closer to nature, which more people are trying to get back to now.
And if you look on the Dartmoor map, you will see lots of places named after the devil. You've got Devil's Elbow, Devil's Kitchen, Devil's Parlour, and the Dewstone, which is the Devil's Rock, all places that were demonised by Christianity, and they were probably just places where the devil were probably places that pagans would use to worship. So the idea of demonising them was to put them off using them and to make everybody afraid of the devil, because of course the devil is an invention of Christianity, and Christianity as a religion is designed to control people, which is why whoever ruled the country wanted to be well in with the church, because that was their way of controlling the people and getting money out of them.
The various names for the devil on Dartmoor, so there's...
Well, you've got Devil's Bridge, Devil's Elbow, Devil's Tor, Devil's Kitchen, Dewstone Rock.
We suddenly realised that we'd come down a different path than the way that we'd gone up, and we were temporarily disorientated. In Dartmoor lore, this is called being pixie-led, when you suddenly feel disorientated in familiar surroundings. However, this seemed to have some purpose to it, because we ended up rescuing a sheep that had got its head stuck in a fence and called the Animal Rescue Service. Strangely enough, sheep are also connected with Hecate.
Through the muddy bit and up, and we came down and went left. So we'd done a circuit. I had a feeling we weren't coming out the right gate, but I couldn't see the wall to the other gate. I just went with it as we were chatting, but obviously that sheep needed our help.
Yeah, and then we came across the sheep.
Yeah.
Oh.
Which is why I was going the wrong direction, thinking that was the way we'd come up, but of course it weren't.
It's strange, and we were just talking about all the places that are named after the devil as well, weren't we?
The devil had us.
Yeah.
Walking with David Phillips through the landscape reminds us that folklore is never just a tale. It's a conversation between the living and the dead, between what we know and what we sense. The crossroads, the hauntings, the echoes of Hecate, they invite us to look again at the thresholds in our own lives, the places where endings and beginnings blur. This is a listener experience that was emailed to me. The listener came to an ancient part of the bridle path that is near Jay's grave, which was shaded by woodland. She says, I got this weird feeling, the type you get in your stomach, almost uneasiness or unexplained anxiety. The knot in my stomach tightening. It almost felt like there was pressure in the air. I felt boxed in, even though there was plenty of room to walk on the path. I was with 2 other people, but I was the only one who seemed to feel it. As soon as we had walked past the spot and we reached the open moor, I felt better and my spirits lifted. This is the only time it has happened. All the other times I have felt happy to be out on Dartmoor. David and I observed that it was quiet the whole time we were at the grave, whereas on the way to it, the road was busy and we had felt harried along. The wind also noticeably dropped, and it was literally as silent as the grave. I felt a sense of peace sweep over me. In my mind's eye, I had the clear, fleeting image of a young woman in white and her child walking away from the crossroads into the green leafy lane. My sincere wish is that this was affirmation that Kitty J and her unborn child are at peace. As we leave the mists of Dartmoor tonight, I want to close with Lena's track, The Myling. It is a song that listens to the forgotten and the wandering. Though the Myling belongs to Scandinavian folklore, its sorrow touches the same deep river as the story of Jay's grave, the river of the unheld, the unprotected, the ones the world turned away from. I'm dedicating this music as a gentle honouring for Mary J, for Stephen, and for every spirit who was never given a place to rest. Thank you for listening. See you next time, and goodbye for now.
The snow fell thin on the mountain trail, the pines bent low in the gale. A woman walked with a lantern dim, and the wind sang soft and pale. But something stirred in the frozen moss where the black earth split in two. A whisper rose from the silent ground, I am coming home to you. Carry me, mother, carry me far over the river and hills. The earth is cold where you left my bones, and my little heart lies still. Carry me, mother, through the night where the church bells slowly ring, until I sleep in the sacred ground and no longer rise a myling. The wind grew sharp and the road grew long, and the lantern's flame burned low. Then something climbed on the woman's back from the drifting winter snow. Its fingers thin as the roots of trees, its breath like frozen rain, and the weight of grief grew heavier still with every step of pain. Carry me, mother, carry me far over the river and hills. The earth is cold where you left my bones, and my little heart lies still. Carry me, mother, through the night where the church bells slowly ring, until I sleep in the sacred ground and no longer rise a myling. The forest listened, the mountains knew, the moon hid under cloud. The child grew heavier step by step, and its voice grew cold and loud. You buried me where The dead